I work at a company where overtime often drags on late into the night, so I frequently take the last train home. The station, located out in the countryside, is almost completely deserted by the time the final train arrives. When I first started at the company, I often found myself waiting alone on that empty platform for the last train. One evening, as usual, I was standing on the platform waiting. Suddenly, I felt a hard shove from behind, nearly throwing me onto the tracks below. I spun around in shock, but there was no one there, nothing at all. Then I heard a voice, a bright, cheerful male voice. He laughed and said, sorry. At that moment, panic flooded through me. I just kept thinking, hurry up and get here, train. But that voice kept appearing like clockwork every 2 or 3 months. Once, as I was walking down the stairs, I was pushed again. Another time, right as the train doors were about to close, I felt my hand being grabbed. Each time, the same sunny male voice rang out from nowhere, laughing. Sorry. There was never anyone around, yet I heard it clearly. Later, as I grew more familiar with the company and my work settled into a rhythm, I went out drinking with a senior colleague one night. On the way home, while waiting for the last train as usual, I was shoved hard from behind once more. Maybe because I was a little drunk, I felt bolder than usual. I shouted angrily, "Have you had enough?" Then came the voice again, that same bright, cheerful male voice. He laughed and said, Sorry. Next time, they'll definitely kill you." From that day on, I switched to riding my bicycle and taking the bus to work. The commute became much more inconvenient, but I was about to risk my life. That was my own experience. Nothing especially dramatic happened, yet it always felt deeply eerie and unsettling. I used to frequent a nationwide chain Rahman shop. Since I drove to work back then, I would often go there alone for meals. As a solo customer, the staff always seated me in the same spot. That day, I sat down as usual and ordered the set meal with fried rice on the side. While waiting for my food, I pulled out my phone and idly browsed the internet to kill time. Suddenly, I noticed the screen looked different from normal. Several large psychological counseling hotline available now. I realized with a start, had I accidentally typed something about suicide? Then I remembered recent news about celebrities taking their own lives. Those articles often included links to mental health resources. I figured I must have clicked one by mistake. I even thought, if this helps someone change their mind, that's a good thing. But right then, a deeply unsettling realization hit me. Wait, last week, when I was sitting in this exact seat, I really had searched for the word suicide. I looked around the shop, trying to find any information or clues related to suicide, but there was nothing. I had no desire to die, and nothing particularly hopeless had happened in my life recently. Yet the memory of that search felt far too vivid to be mere déjà vu. It sent chills down my spine. The more I thought about it, the more wrong it felt. Was it because of this seat? My gut told me it was the seat itself, but being inside this shop that made dangerous things happen. I quickly stood up, apologized to the staff, and hurried out. The next day, I shared the experience on social media. Soon I received many private messages and comments. "You were being pulled in, right? Be careful. Never go back to that shop again. And don't casually search weird keywords." Seeing those warnings made me a little uneasy, but I didn't take them too seriously. I just thought the commenters were being overly sensitive. A few days later, I had already put the whole thing out of my mind. Then one evening after work, I was stuck in traffic, video minutes calling my girlfriend. We were chatting about dinner when she suddenly spoke in a serious tone. "You're not going back to that Raymond shop, right? Remember, don't go there anymore." I laughed it off and said, "Of course I won't go back. Don't worry." But at that exact moment, the sign of the ramen shop appeared clearly in the distance ahead. My heart lurched. I immediately turned the steering wheel left and got off that road. My girlfriend saw the background through the video and noticed what I had done. Her voice relaxed a little as she said, "You can go to the udon place nearby, but stay away from the ramen shop." I answered casually, pretending it was nothing, I was just passing by. But inside, I already felt a strange unease creeping in. Later, when I reached my destination and was about to end the call, my girlfriend suddenly screamed, "Wait, aren't you at the ramen shop? I can see the sign in your background." My mind went completely blank. Somehow, without realizing it, I had returned to that shop again. I didn't even think twice. I started the engine and fled in a panic. To this day, I still can't be sure whether some kind of force was at work there, drawing people in. If my girlfriend hadn't warned me that time, would I have sat down in that familiar seat again and searched for keywords like suicide? And if this had continued for a long time, what would have happened afterward? I really don't dare to imagine. A short while ago, my father remarried, and I gained a new mother. But that woman was the kind of detestable person you see in TV dramas. She always put on a pleasant face for my father, yet the moment she was in front of me, the insults never stopped. That day, my father and that woman left together on a trip, so I decided to invite my friends over to spend the night. The three of us were all huge fans of horror stories. We spent the evening browsing various horror websites on the computer, but ordinary ghost encounters no longer satisfied us, so we started looking into curse methods, suicide sites, and other dangerous things. That was when we found a curse for making someone you hate suffer misfortune. The exact steps were at midnight. Fill a plastic bottle with 10 yen coins, add a strand of the hated person's hair, silently recite their name in your mind, then say it twice, screw the cap back on, and bury it at a shrine. The curse would activate on its own, dragging the target into a deep abyss of misfortune. It sounded like something a grade school kid would come up with, but the other curses required harshness to materials like cat blood or rat corpses, so we decided to try this one first. We got a plastic bottle and pulled some hair from that woman's pillow. One of my friends looked a little worried and asked what we would do if the curse actually worked. But in my heart, I really wanted that woman dead, so I decided without hesitation to carry it out. The lights in the room were on, yet the space around us felt strangely heavy. I dropped the 10 yen coins and the woman's hair inside, then silently prayed whatever God is listening, "Please kill that woman." I screwed the cap on tight. Since there was a shrine right behind my house, we ran out immediately and buried the bottle. Whether the curse worked or not, I kept thinking she deserved it, and we went back inside. About a week later, the woman fell down the stairs and sprained her ankle. 3 days after that, she fell from a high place and broke her nose. It seemed the curse really had taken effect. I went to tell the friends who had performed it with me that the results were showing, but one of them stayed quiet for a moment before saying, "Haven't you noticed? 10 yen coins don't actually fit inside that plastic bottle." At first I thought he was talking nonsense, but when I tried to push a 10 yen coin into the bottle again, it wouldn't go in at all. My friend had wanted to tell me this the whole time but had been too scared to speak up. Why had it gone in so smoothly that night? An ominous feeling settled over me, so now I'm heading to the shrine to dig it up and see. One summer day, I went on a beach trip with my boyfriend. His friend Kitada and Kit Ada's girlfriend came along too. My boyfriend had a motorcycle, so he rode it himself, while Kitada had a car, so the three of us rode with him. The four of us had a great time at the beach. By the time the sky began to darken, we decided to head home. On the way to get the vehicles, Kitada suddenly suggested to my boyfriend, "Let's race, whoever gets home first wins." Since all four of us lived in the same apartment building, the destination was the same, and my boyfriend accepted the challenge. On the way back, they started their speed race. In the end, we arrived first. Kitada and his girlfriend were thrilled about winning, but I felt uneasy. My boyfriend was an experienced rider. He should have arrived before them. Yet that night, he never came home. The next morning when I woke up, I heard news I couldn't believe. Kitada and his girlfriend stood at my door with grief and unease written on their faces. Kitada spoke first this morning. I received a call from the police. Your boyfriend, Takamoto, crashed his motorcycle on a curve and hit the guardrail. He died on the spot. I couldn't accept it. I collapsed to the floor in tears. But then Kitada and his girlfriend told me something even more shocking. Kid Ad, as girlfriend spoke first, we told you the police called in the morning, right? After that, someone came knocking on our door. We asked who it was, and the person answered, "It's Takamoto." We were terrified. I just stared at them, unable to process what I was hearing. Kitada continued, "We thought it was a prank at first and were about to yell at them, but it really was him. We saw his face clearly on the intercom screen. We weren't joking. We were too scared to open the door. They warned me, if Takamoto comes looking for you, no matter what, don't open the door. I think he might be trying to take us with him to his world." After they left my room, I sat alone recalling all the memories with my boyfriend and cried by myself. That night, there was a sudden knock at my door. I thought, she's come. Fighting back the pain, I ignored the knocking, but my boyfriend kept pounding on the door, calling out, "It's me. Open up." I huddled in the corner of the room, desperately covering my ears, but the memories and longing overwhelmed me. In the end, I walked toward the door. From outside, my boyfriend shouted, "Open the door. It's me." The knocking grew louder and louder. I crept up to the door and looked through the peephole. The person standing there was really my boyfriend. Tears poured down my face. Without realizing it, I was about to open the door, but then I remembered he was already dead. I screamed, "You're already dead." I shouted, and the knocking grew even more violent. Desperate for my boyfriend to finally rest in peace, I steeled myself and opened the door. As soon as I did, I cried out, "You're already dead." At that moment, my boyfriend's face pressed right up to mine. In a cold voice he said, "The ones who should be dead are you." I fainted on the spot. When I came to again, I was lying on a bed in the treatment room. Hovering right in front of my face was the boyfriend who should have already been dead, his eyes filled with happy tears. I couldn't make sense of any of it. He spoke softly. "That day, after the competition, I got home first. I waited downstairs for a long time, but none of you came back, so I decided to head back and check on you. On the way, I saw your car completely wrecked. Kitada and the others in the front seat died instantly. You were injured, but when they rushed you to the hospital, you stayed unconscious." Hearing those words, I first accepted the fact that Kitada and the rest were gone. Then an overwhelming terror swept over me, and I clung tightly to him. The friends who had died in the crash must have somehow slipped into my mind. They were trying to keep me from waking up, trying to drag me into their world. If I had ignored my boyfriend's calls at the door, I probably would never have woken again. I now work at a bank in an ordinary mid-business level management position. But before I graduated from middle school, I lived in a place you could only call the deep countryside. After high school, almost every child moved to the city. Some families even relocated together. It wasn't uncommon there. So back then my hometown was roughly split between the elderly and children. Before I get to the main story, I should mention that I don't have any special sensitivity to the supernatural. Still, there was one terrifying experience I can never forget. It happened when I was in the first grade of elementary school. The memory is a little hazy because I was so young, but the fear remains vivid even now. At the time, the kids were obsessed with building secret bases. One day, I went into the nearby hills with four close friends, carrying snacks and toys. Our secret base was an abandoned little wooden cabin and deep in the mountain not far from school. We barely fixed it up at all. We just claimed it as our hideout. Near the cabin ran a narrow path, probably an old trail that had been widened a bit so one person could just squeeze through. We jokingly called it the upgraded trail. What surprised us most was that right beside the base there was actually a toilet. Of course, It was nothing more than a hole dug in the ground surrounded by wooden boards, but for children it felt like pure luxury. That day we explored the mountain and ended up playing far too late. One of my friends suddenly said, "Sorry, I need to use the toilet first." The rest of us laughed and teased him for holding it until now. I asked, "Is it number 2? He replied, No, you guys go on ahead." We watched him head into the toilet, then started back down the upgraded trail. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed behind us. We spun around. Our friend came bursting out of the toilet, face deathly pale. Floating right behind him was a woman's severed head, eyes wide with rage, staring straight at us. All 5 of us panicked and ran screaming all the way home. When our families asked why we were so late, we told them everything we had seen in the toilet. Later, the village priest came and performed an exorcism for us. After the ritual, he said, "You should be fine now." We finally breathed a sigh of relief, feeling as if we had stepped out of endless darkness. That toilet was later completely sealed off, chained and padlocked. They said our secret base was torn down. Even if it hadn't been demolished, none of us would have had the courage to go near it again. But the story washed over. The friend who had gone to the toilet that day died suddenly in the spring of his 2nd year of junior high. The cause was unknown, but it was suicide. Years later, when I returned to my hometown to visit my grandparents, I stopped by to see the now elderly priest. He told me more about that toilet. That spot had been considered cursed for a very long time. According to him, during the Edo period, a young couple from different villages had been beheaded for a forbidden love affair. The execution ground was believed to be exactly where the toilet now stood. I had thought the repeated rituals would have calmed the spirits, but perhaps I had underestimated their grudge. A chill ran down my spine as I listened. At the end, the priest added, "That boy probably came face to face with their resentment. I truly couldn't save him." To this day, the toilet has never been torn down. I don't know if anyone still dares to approach it. Lately, my health has been poor. I've been hospitalized for a few days for tests, but I suspect this time they won't find any clear cause. When I was 8 years old, I suddenly lost the hearing in both ears. The reason remains unknown to this day. Back then, I still lived in that rural home, a place where people still sometimes used words like tribe. Although my family originally came from the same prefecture, we had moved in from elsewhere, so we weren't treated very well. The villagers weren't particularly kind to us. There was, however, an old lady, I'll call her Granny Tay. She seemed to feel sorry for me, a child in such circumstances. Sometimes she would give me snacks and speak to me with gentle kindness. At that time, I was dealing with some mild bullying and had no friends to play with, so I went to Grandmadu in Mado, Sierna's house almost every day to help her tend the fields and listen to her old stories. After school that day, I followed my usual routine and headed over to find her. Normally she would be out in the fields at that hour, but she was nowhere in sight. I walked up to her front door, forgot to even ring the bell, and simply opened it. The house was empty. Just as I was about to leave, a faint human voice drifted from deep inside the house. When I heard it, I called out that I was coming in, then stepped inside uninvited. I kept calling for Grandmadu Yern, but no one answered. It felt strange. Yet as I turned to go, the weak voice came again. I told myself it must be her. Still calling her name, I walked farther in, but there was still no reply. The sound kept coming from a room deep in the house, one I had never entered before. Gathering my courage, I approached that unfamiliar room, slid open its door, and discovered another door behind it, completely covered in talismans. The faint voice was coming from inside, though I couldn't make out the words. As a young child, the sight of all those paper charms frightened me a little. Still, I thought Grandmadu Nasir might be unwell and resting in there, so I summoned my courage and opened the second door. Inside, Grandmadu Nasir was not there. The room was almost bare, containing only a large Buddhist altar or shrine. A gentle, tiny voice rose from the altar, like the buzz of a mosquito. Since I couldn't understand what it was saying, I wanted to step closer, but the moment I tried to enter the room, an overwhelming wave of terror washed over me, as if warning me of danger. I froze for a second, yet something seemed to pull me forward, and I found myself walking toward the altar step by step. When I reached it, the faint voice spoke again. "Child, can you open this for me?" My instinct screamed that I must not open it, but my body moved on its own, reached out and touched the door of the altar. The instant I opened it, I squeezed my eyes shut. When I finally gathered the courage to look, I saw a bundle of hair inside. Just then, Grand Aunt Madumantoy, Siern's voice called from the entrance. "Xiao's in. Is that you?" Hearing her, I quickly closed the altar door and tried to hurry out of the room, but she had already reached the doorway. Her face was filled with horror as she moved toward me. In a stern voice she demanded, "Xiao's in. What are you doing in here?" I answered that I had heard a voice and thought it was her inside. Grand Maduman asked urgently, "Did you open it? Did you open that door?" Afraid she would scold me, I lied and said I hadn't. When she heard that, she dropped to her knees and began to cry. In a soft voice she whispered, "Thank goodness, you didn't open it." Then she led me out of the room, closed both doors behind us, and said, "We're going to the temple now. You'll let your parents know. Don't worry." Even though I had no idea what was happening, I followed her to the temple. When we arrived, a kind-looking monk in his 40s was already waiting for us at the entrance. He greeted us gently and said, "This way, please." As I stepped inside, he asked me quietly, "I heard what happened. You only went into that room, right? You didn't open the altar door, did you?" Unsure how to answer, I stayed silent. Grand Madugyar asked again, "Xiao's in. You didn't open it, right?" I still didn't understand what was going on, but I could tell the situation was serious and I might get in trouble, so I lied once more, lowering my head and answering softly, "No." The monk nodded and said, "That's good. He'll perform the sutra recitation to handle it." I then underwent what felt like an exorcism ritual inside the temple. When it was over, the monk gave me a protective amulet containing a talisman. As I left the temple with the amulet in hand, my parents were already waiting outside. When Grand Maduman seemed about to apologize to them, my father cut her off sharply. "Don't come near our child again." She lowered her head, looking heartbroken. On the drive home, I tried to explain to my parents that it was Grandma's fault. I was the one who had gone inside, but they only said, "Anyway, from now on, stay away from that house." That night, exhausted, I went to bed early. I placed the amulet beside my pillow. After some time, I woke up and noticed the amulet had been torn to pieces, charred black as if burned by fire. A strange feeling came over me. The surroundings were terrifyingly quiet, no insect sounds at all. Suddenly I sensed something outside the window. When I turned to look, I saw a woman standing there. I immediately looked away, but the image burned into my memory. Her hair was wildly disheveled, her skin an unnatural, vivid red, her eyes like bottomless black holes. Her mouth was split open in a horrifying grin. Terrified, I dove back under the covers, trembling uncontrollably. That was when I realized something else. I howled and to even hear the sound of the blanket rustling. It was that the world had gone quiet, my ears had gone deaf. The next day, my parents took me to the doctor. The diagnosis was unexplained hearing loss. My ears were structurally normal. My parents vaguely suspected the incident at Grand Maduman's house was connected, but out of fear they chose not to get involved. Not long after, it was said that Grand Maduman set fire to her own house and perished inside, disappearing along with the building. A few years later, I returned to the temple and sought out the monk. I told him everything that had happened. Since I had lost my hearing, we had to communicate by writing back and forth on paper. I asked him what that thing had been. The monk wrote that it was called Lord Nayuram. That woman had been a living sacrifice to an ancient curse. Grand Madukyo, Wamblin's family had guarded her for generations. strictly forbidden from ever revealing the truth to outsiders, because she had become estranged from her own family. Grand Maduke Ormonesiern had shouldered the burden of guarding her alone. In the end, overwhelmed by guilt for breaking the rules and allowing you to come into contact with her, she took her own life. When you opened the doors of the Buddhist altar that night, the woman was set free. The monk admitted he had been unable to exorcise her either. The amulet you received had probably saved your life. Both your sudden deafness and the charred state of the talisman were proof of just how dangerous that entity truly was. Afterward, the monk urged me to forget everything I had seen and heard, but I could never erase the memory of that woman's smile, her skin an unnatural, vivid red. Yet I always feel that my own time is running short. These days, there are frequent reports of foreigners breaking into temples and stealing Buddha statues. I cannot help but wonder whether such reckless acts might also release something unspeakably terrifying. Whenever those thoughts surface, a deep fear settles over me. In the end, I want to offer this warning: sometimes curiosity can be far more dangerous than we ever imagine.